Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Music for a Book podcast, Season 3. We are your hosts. I'm Britt.
And I'm Hannah.
And every 2 weeks, we read and review a book. We assign a song to that book, draw the parallels between the two, and have some fun along the way. So welcome back to Season 3, Episode 5 of the Music for a Book podcast.
Yes. And this week, we are walking down the aisle, or are we?
Perfect.
With our review of The Wedding People by Alison Espach.
So how this episode is going to work is that we are going to go over trigger warnings and then a brief synopsis for this book, and then we're going to reveal our song choices. Very excited. It's our favorite part. After our song choices, we're going to move into what we like to call spoiler territory, meaning anything and everything that happens cover to cover inside of this book will be discussed and will be talked about in probably some pretty good detail. So if you have not read this book and you want to read this book, we recommend pausing the podcast and then coming back once you do.
Dear reader,
as always, please check your own trigger warnings.
Yes.
This one does have some pretty heavy things, so definitely check it before you read it. So these ones are from Storygraph. So we have a suicide attempt, suicidal thoughts, infertility, death of a parent, miscarriage, infidelity, vomit, cancer, animal death are the major things.
Yes, it is. It's heavy, but it's done in a really light and fun kind of way. But just be warned, it is. I was a little surprised how heavy some of this stuff was. So then our synopsis, it is from Storygraph as well. It's a beautiful day in Newport, Rhode Island, when Phoebe Stone arrives at the Grand Cornwall Inn wearing a green dress, gold heels, not a bag in sight, alone. She's immediately mistaken by everyone in the lobby for one of the wedding people, but she's actually the only guest at the Cornwall who isn't here for the big event. Phoebe is here because she's dreamt of coming for years. She hopes to shuck oysters and take sunset sails with her husband, only now she's here without him, at rock bottom, and determined to have one less decadent splurge on herself. Meanwhile, the bride has accounted for every detail and every possible disaster the weekend might yield, except for Phoebe. And Phoebe's plan, which makes it that much more surprising when the women can't stop confiding in each other.
Yes. So before we jump in, I do want to put this disclaimer in there because there is a theme of suicide in this book. We understand life's challenges can sometimes be difficult, whether you're facing mental health struggles, emotional distress, alcohol or drug use concerns, or just need somebody to talk to. There are counselors available at the 988 Lifeline, and you are not alone. I want to make sure you guys.
Please know that. And the 988 Lifeline is available 24/7, 365. Your conversations are free and confidential. You can call or text the number. And we are big proponents of taking care of yourself and your mental health. And you matter. Your time here matters. And you deserve to live a life that you feel fulfilled by. So we just wanted to put that in there because it relates very heavily to the subject of the book itself.
Yes. Now our song choices.
I'm so excited. I had a song immediately after I read this book. It was one that I was like, yes, I love it. I think it fits very well with the theme itself. I'm taking it back to our girl Taylor Swift, and I did pick It's Time to Go from Evermore.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
I picked another Evermore song.
Mm-hmm.
I picked Happiness.
Yes. Love Happiness so much. It's criminally underrated. I actually think both of these songs are criminally underrated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, It's Time to Go was like, I think it's forgotten about, and I just love it so much.
Yeah. It's funny because it's one of my favorite songs.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a big Evermore girly, so.
Yes. I love, this book is very Evermore coded. Very much.
Perfect for a November episode.
Oh my God, yeah. I love this. But we're going to move ahead now into the book, into spoiler territory. If you don't want spoilers, back out now. I will say, if you feel like you could handle the subject matter of this book, I personally think that this is a book that almost everyone could benefit from reading. I think that I've never read anything like it personally, and I don't know if anything else could really compare to the way that it was handled, but I think it's a must read for a lot of people.
I would recommend it for sure. We're going to talk about anything and everything in this book.
Yes.
Initially, how do you feel like the wedding setting contributed to the overall mood of the novel?
I loved it. Like, I thought that Phoebe's initial reaction to the people who were there for the wedding and the descriptor that she had of them, what was it? It was like high bun and someone had a neck pillow on.
Yeah.
Because there are so many at weddings, especially destination weddings, where you're getting all of these people together. It was the perfect way to intersect so many different personalities and so many different storylines in a way that felt cohesive and still like
Mhm.
it wasn't overwhelming with the amount of stuff that was going on because it made sense that they were all there for a wedding.
Yep. No, I agree with you. I think it was a great backdrop for this. Just the positioning, what I want to talk about next before we dive into, just about how she balances like humor with deeper, sometimes tragic themes. And I think having the wedding being like, it's like supposed to be like the greatest day of your life, right? Versus Phoebe's not her greatest day of her life.
Correct. Yeah. I feel like the contrast of the problems that Lila was experiencing and the problems that Phoebe was experiencing and the way that they were handled was so funny because Lila's problems are so minuscule, so trivial, so dumb, really, genuinely in the grand scheme of life. But to her, they're cataclysmic. Like they were over the top. And then Phoebe's sitting there and she wants to die. Like she's done with life. And she's just like, it's a Tuesday.
Yep.
It's fine. Like, I don't know. She just struck the perfect balance to me where I was like laughing out loud. And then I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
What is this?
Yes. We touched on basically our two main characters are going to be Phoebe and Lila.
Yes.
So Phoebe is our main character. She has an ex-husband, Matt, and who is now with their friend who he had an affair with, Mia.
Mm-hmm.
We'll dive into that a little bit more. And then we have the wedding people. There's a lot of wedding people. There's the
so many
Jims.
wedding people.
I thought there was another name, but I don't think there is. We have the bride and groom, Lila and Gary. And then we have Mel, a.k.a. Juice, Gary's daughter.
Love Juice.
Best man, Jim, and the maid of honor, which we'll find out later who that is. And then there's a ton of Gary's family, Lila's family, a lot of fun people we will meet along the way.
Yes. And so the book just opens up with Phoebe arriving at this hotel, and she had seen an image for this hotel, had told her husband, I want to go here. I want to experience this. I want to have these moments. And so she gets out of the car. She has nothing with her. She's wearing a fancy ass dress. She starts noticing like how busy the hotel is. And this is where, we're introduced to neck pillow and high bun. And the bride comes around and hands everyone like wedding favors who's standing in line, and it's just under the assumption that everyone is there for the wedding. It's so funny, just like immediately off the bat, where like they're in this like super ornate and beautiful place, and you wonder why Phoebe's there, because she does feel like an outsider in the situation. The book was written in third person, but I do feel like we got a really big deep dive into Phoebe's head and Phoebe's life, so I thought that was really interesting. Just as she's standing there and like observing all of these things, I was so placed there. Like I could picture absolutely everything that was happening, these conversations, and she compares all of the wedding people to the Hitchcock movie The Birds. There's just these extreme parallels, and we find out there's a lot of parallels that Phoebe makes to literature because of her time as a professor and the job that her and her ex-husband had together. And I thought that those were always interesting little tidbits. Even if I didn't understand every reference, like I think I understood the thought behind it.
Yeah, definitely could pick up on it and go with where she was headed in those. Yeah, the bride hands out these gift baskets, and then they end up being in the same elevator together to go up to their rooms. Like I can just picture her like super bubbly, like, oh, are you in Gary's family? No. Are you in my family? And Phoebe's like, no. Phoebe's like, you don't know who's in your family? And she's like, I have a big family.
There's a lot of people here. Yeah. I don't know everyone.
But Phoebe's like, nope. And then she's just like straightforward to the point, tells Lila why she's there. She's like, I'm here to kill myself. And then Lila's like, no, you're not. Like, no, you're not. It's my wedding week. I waited my whole life for this. You're not doing this. You're not doing anything to ruin it. And she like freaks out.
Yeah. I thought that was, can you imagine? You're at the lowest point of your life. You just like say it out loud to someone like, oh, I'm here to die basically. And they're like, no, absolutely not. You will not be doing that. And like the way that she says it, it's immediately about her.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, no. I don't care what's going on in your life.
Yeah, you're not ruining my wedding.
This is my big day. This is my big week. I'm here for me.
And so we do find out about Phoebe's life before coming to the hotel. Like you mentioned, she's a professor, an adjunct professor. Like she never got hired full time. She just went to school there and continued to stay there. She really wanted to have a baby. They tried, had a miscarriage. We meet her like circle of friends in the academic world. And so we meet Mia, who Phoebe says for all purposes, right, is her best friend at work.
Yes.
And then she's married to Tom. Tom and Mia did have a baby 9 months ago, and we find out that Tom actually attempted suicide 2 years ago, and now is like very open and talking about working through his depression and what he's working on with that. They do have dinner a lot. Phoebe invites him over because she wants to have friends. You know, this is another couple friend and everything like that. And I think she internally likes that the baby's around too because she wants that for herself too.
Yeah. One night, Matt doesn't come home from work right away. Phoebe wonders where he is, and she's trying to like keep things moving. So she sends him like a risque text, and she's really surprised when he doesn't reply or say anything when he gets home. Because even if he didn't reply right away, he likely saw it. And so coming home and not saying anything about it, she was like, what the hell? But instead, he comes home with champagne ready to celebrate. He won the Arts and Letters Scholar of the Year award. Like, this has been his like creme de la creme pinnacle career moment for him. He's so excited. And basically she's like, yeah, I can believe it, because if you stay a professor there for long enough, everyone's going to get a turn at it, essentially. And at the banquet, when they're having this reception for it, she notices the old Matt start to come out when he's talking to Mia, and she feels this shift toward Mia and her thoughts about her. And then we find out on another very normal day, and I think that this is like a running theme throughout the book, is that it is just a day. It's a normal day and everything is fine. And yet it could be someone's worst day of their life, best day of their life, simultaneously happening. And I think that is just like an overarching theme of like, you really never know what someone's going through. You never know how you can impact someone just by being there or just your presence. And so I just think that the life lessons that run deep in this have just so much meaning to them. But we find out again on a normal day that Matt is in love with Mia and he is leaving Phoebe for her.
At least it's not her sister. At least we didn't have another comfort and joy situation.
Oh my God. Yeah, and at least there wasn't like an immediate Lost style plane crash after.
Yeah.
It's just, there's just so many awkward interactions that start happening. And I think it's the way that Matt and Mia expected her to just be like, fine with it, just be like okay with what was happening. No, absolutely not. That is not okay. That will not be happening. But yeah, so Phoebe at that point decides that she has enough. She's had enough, and she's had enough of this monotonous lifestyle. She looks back on her time with Matt, and like, I think it's a little bit further down, but we run through the history of their relationship and the passion and the love that they had for each other originally. And she looks in her closet to figure out what to decide, like what to wear when she books a room at the Cornwall. And she realizes that she has nothing. Like, everything is the same. It's the same sweater, the same vibe, the same colors, the same everything. And they built a routine so intensely that they have nothing left of there's literally nothing there. It's so bland.
Yeah.
So that's why she walks up to this hotel in the green dress she bought for herself and never wore prior to that point.
Yes. Then we jump to now. And Phoebe decides she wants her last meal to be good, like really good. So she gets ready to order room service, and they tell her, sorry, room service was paused because opening reception. Because this hotel is supposed to be all wedding guests. There's not supposed to be a random person like Phoebe there. She's just upset about it. And then there's a knock on her door, and it's Lila. She's back. Phoebe has a bad habit of like smoking and just like random times. Lila's like, you can't smoke here. And Phoebe's like, I'm on the balcony. And I just thought that interaction was just like another way of just putting them together as like opposites and just.
Yes.
Phoebe's like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not here for your wedding. And then Lila like freaks out over Phoebe's view. And she's like, wait, this is an ocean view. Like, I got a shoreline view. And Phoebe's like, yeah, you see the shore.
Yeah, she's so mad about it.
Yeah. Like that this random lady has a better room than the bridal suite. So
yeah,
poor Lila's like freaking out there. And Lila is there basically to convince Phoebe not to kill herself. All for selfish reasons. She's been waiting forever for her wedding.
I cannot imagine being at my lowest and then seeing this like entitled person walk in and being like, you literally can't take your own life right now because it would actually ruin my wedding, and that's not allowed.
Right?
I cannot imagine that. But there's a little bit more depth to Lila than we first see. However, I will say she is, man, you really have to dig deep to get past that surface with this one. And even still, it is a shallow hole. Like, we are shallow, but it's just the contrast of people is so interesting. And we find out that Lila's fiance was actually married before, and his first wife died from cancer, and they have a daughter. And so that's juice. An interesting thing too, and I think that this is it's so small, but it's so true that it happens all the time. So when they're talking and Lila's like, Phoebe, you can't kill yourself. And she's like, whatever, I'm not listening to you. She tells Lila, because she noticed it downstairs, that she has something in her teeth. And Lila is shocked because she hadn't eaten anything like recently. It was from way earlier in the day, and not a singular person, her friends, her family, anyone said anything to her about it.
Yep.
That happens all the time where people are like, oh, I don't want to offend them or something like that. I try to live by that 30-second rule of life where it's okay to comment on something if they can fix it within 30 seconds. But if you can't fix it, don't fucking say anything.
Yeah, or like, don't make a big deal about it.
Yeah.
If there's a group of people like, oh, hey, Britt, you got something in your teeth. Like, no, like either like gesture or point or something. Yeah. There's ways to do it.
And the front desk staff is like, because this is such a nice hotel and this is rented out just for the wedding, they have to literally run to CVS to go get floss for her. And they are like overly accommodating in all of the ways humanly possible, which makes it so funny when like they can't accommodate certain things and then there's like an epic meltdown. But there's something about like coconut pillows.
Yeah.
Like
Lila
when Phoebe
has to
gets
have her
there,
coconut pillows.
yeah, and Phoebe's like, what the fuck is a coconut pillow? And I was like, what the fuck is a coconut pillow?
Yeah. And so while they're talking too, Lila unloads a lot on Phoebe. Like,
so much. Talk about a
she's
trauma
a talker.
dump.
Yeah. But she talks about how her mom, Patricia, thinks that she shouldn't marry Gary because it feels like the same mistake that her mom made marrying Lila's father.
Yeah.
Phoebe's like, how do you know? And she's like, she tells me. And I love going back and like finding any like little foreshadows and different things.
Yeah.
But they have a conversation of what they do, like basically to like regulate their emotions, right? Like get them back down to normal. And they ask Lila, right, is there one thing you feel capable of doing right now instead of crying? And to Lila, that was always to take a long bath. And so I just think that information comes handy down the line too.
Yeah.
About her.
And now there is a moment, we are going to talk about the actual attempt of suicide itself. So just be forewarned. We will also be talking about that theme throughout as well. So again, I know we've already talked about it, but this is probably the first and only book that we've read that really tackles this kind of stuff in the way that this does. That night, Phoebe does take her pills, and it was her cat's pills that she had brought with her. And she's listening. She has the doors open to the balcony. She's listening to the speeches from the wedding people. And she hears Lila's mom give a speech, even though Lila said specifically that she refused to let her mom have a speech at the wedding. And she realizes that she doesn't like the feeling that she has. She doesn't like what's happening to her. And it's something to be said too for the way that she chose to attempt to take her own life. There's actually a lot of research that shows that women will do it in a way that's far less violent, and they have more time almost to ruminate on what's happening, or chances to like prevent it from happening. They're far less likely to do something more damaging to their bodies physically. So she runs to the bathroom, pukes it all up, and then it just kind of fades from there. And we don't know what happens until the next day.
I like how this book is structured too, because it's basically the wedding week. So it starts off Tuesday, and then now we have the next day, which is Wednesday. And so Phoebe wakes up and decides she wakes up in the middle of the night or something. I think some random time. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to go to the hot tub. Like, I feel alive. Like, I'm going to go do something.
Yeah. And
so she's laying in the hot tub with her back to the jets, eyes closed, and then a man joins her. And they have a conversation, a pretty good one. She's pretty open with thoroughly telling her why she's there, that she was there to kill herself. She doesn't end up getting his name, and they have like a pretty good conversation.
Yeah. You can tell they have like an immediate chemistry, and that is a prominent theme throughout, is their like tension and kind of attraction to each other, which she wasn't expecting, especially given all of the hurt surrounding her ex. And like she obviously wasn't planning on even being there in this moment in time. And so that theme of human connection, bringing her back from this like bottom.
Yep. And she's like bold with him. And she's literally just like, hey, I want to fuck you.
I laughed. I literally cackled when I read that.
I'm like, oh, okay, Phoebe, we're just going for it.
Good for you, girl.
And he's like, I'm with someone.
I really thought he was considering, for real.
Wow, no, same. After this, after he like turns her down, we find out a little bit more about Matt and Phoebe's relationship. Just a quote from the book is when they went to this park and Matt whispers in her ear, like, hey, you want to get married here? She mentions how he says it so casually, just like the same way that he originally asked her, like, hey, let's grab a beer. And so I just thought that right after her interaction with the hot tub too, like how it just didn't feel casual, like it felt alive.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely. At noon, Lila knocks on Phoebe's door and says, I knew you wouldn't do it. Which, okay, Lila, okay. But Phoebe makes a comment about how Lila has very little curiosity about other people. And she's surprised that Lila like walked in and didn't say, how are you? Considering the fact that Lila knew she was going to try and take her own life. But instead she's like, glad you're here. What can you do for me? Phoebe says she even asks, how are you to her therapist at the beginning of her sessions. And that's something that like I definitely relate to.
Same here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where you sit down and they go, oh, how are you doing? And you say something and you're like, how are you? And they're there for you, but I have to ask how the other person is.
So Lila like forces Phoebe to talk to her about like her view about like her and Gary. She makes a comment how her friends just keep saying, Gary is wonderful, Gary is wonderful, Gary is wonderful. Yeah. And she's like, Christmas is wonderful. Like Gary is just Gary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Lila, you do not love this man.
Sure don't. You sure do not.
Yeah. And Lila ends up inviting her sailing because there's a minimum amount of people that need to be on the boat and half the people are hungover. Phoebe's like, well, I don't have clothes to wear. And I was like, oh, you can borrow some of my mom's, which I was glad they addressed those little details. Because how is she supposed to participate in anything with this wedding if she didn't have anything?
Yeah, that's how I was. Thankfully that she came in with literally nothing, like the dress on her back and that's it. So I was very glad that we got details about her going shopping later and being able to borrow clothes and things like that. The girls drive together. The groom is meeting them. And we see High Bun, Neck Pillow. We meet Marla, who's the groom's sister. We meet Juice, aka Mel, which is the groom's daughter. Marla is an interesting one. And so is Lila's mom. So we definitely have some very curious dynamics that I think really play into like why Lila is the way that she is, but also like how everything comes to play as the book goes on. They rent a vintage convertible, which is stick shift, and Phoebe does know how to drive it, luckily.
On the way to the wharf to go sailing, Lila tells the story of their engagement. They got engaged in Germany. How cute. So they get there, and let me pull this up in the book because
yes,
I mean, like we always say, I let a book be a book. So I did not, if I would have thought about it, I feel like I would have seen this coming, but I didn't actually think about it.
Yeah, I had like a small suspicion, but for once in my life, I didn't put two and two together. I think because I just had no idea what was happening and like where this book was going.
Same, because I'm like, it's not a romance novel.
It's not a mystery. It's just like a general fiction book.
Yep. They arrive at the wharf and Lila sees her groom and she exclaims, Gary! And who is Gary, Britt? Who is Gary?
Gary is the groom. Gary is the man that Lila is supposed to be marrying.
Wild.
So
I feel like their interactions like awkward, like Phoebe and Gary's, because obviously they recognize each other. Gary's like puzzled. So Phoebe is deciding whether she's going to acknowledge that they've met before or not. And Gary just ignores it. And Phoebe's about to correct him, like, oh, we actually did. But then Juice interrupts him and is like, my dog died. And she has like this like virtual dog.
Dude, I imagine like, did you picture like a Tamagotchi? Because that's what I picture.
Yep.
Like, Juice is just sitting there with this virtual dead dog. And Lila already sucks. So just picture Lila with this dead virtual dog.
Right. And Phoebe just helps Juice deal with that, which I thought was really, really special. Like Phoebe's I feel like coming into her new self. And I know we'll talk about it more later, but I was listening to it right before this episode. Is like my song Happiness, where it's like I haven't met the new me yet. And I feel like this whole book is about like, you know, her finding the new her and kind of taking that step up that she didn't before.
Yeah. And what I love too is just like so many of the characters are polar opposites or like the antithesis of another character. And you just get to see how two people would vastly handle a situation so differently. In the moment, like we have Lila and Marla, and then also too, we see Phoebe flirting with Jim a little bit because Jim's the family flirt, gets around. Phoebe bonds with Juice. There's just so many. It's just such an interesting dynamic, especially because once Lila says Phoebe's a good friend of mine, no one questions it. They just like assume that they've never met this person before.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think the only person that like actually gets a little bit suspicious is her mom, like Lila's mom. I think this too, what you were saying, with the backdrop being the wedding, it makes things believable, right? It makes her just kind of being intertwined with all these people so much more believable, because at a wedding, like I feel like weddings I've gone to, you make these like wedding friends, the wedding people, right?
Yes.
And so I really could picture it there. It's so minor, but like the vacations in a cup argument is like just ridiculous. It's like this drink that they made up, and it just like shows too that difference between people and how they say it and what's the right way and everything.
Just so minor. And I think that's like, we mentioned it earlier too, but just like that's the whole point of the story, is like it's those little things that make these relationships, that make people, that I don't know. I just, like I said, I can't really put my finger on like what it was about this book that like just resonated so much with me, but it just did. It did something so unique, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one quote that we have in here that Gary actually says to Phoebe, which is super interesting. You know, he asks her if she's always been so critical of herself. Where did she become so good at identifying flaws and all of this stuff? And that's literally her job, like a literary critic, basically. And Gary just says, alive. You struck me as a person who was fully alive. It was inspiring, actually, which
like, and it just that position, like right after, because when she saw him at the hot tub was literally when she woke up and she was like, I'm alive. So
exactly. Like she had a new lease on life, basically.
Yep. So for Gary to pick up on that, I just think is so cool. Then Phoebe takes a bath and she tries to have some fun in the bath, and we'll just leave it at that for right now. And Lila breaks in and is like upset because now she has no maid of honor. Her maid of honor, Viv, is MIA, not coming, whatever.
She's gone.
Yeah. And then
she's gone.
Like we've talked about before, Lila, like everything to Lila is the end of the world. You know, she doesn't care that Phoebe was just trying to relax in the bath. She was forced to go sailing because they needed an extra person. And Lila's like, well, I have no maid of honor. So guess what? Phoebe, you're my maid of honor.
Yeah, and it's just, it's so funny. Like, just Lila is hilarious.
Because, like, there like conversation before that, too. Because Phoebe's like, maybe Pauline will do it. Because, like, Pauline is the front desk girl, right? That, like, just does everything. Like, anything they ask for. When Lila asks Phoebe too, the way Lila like describes herself, she's like, I'm the bride. I get to decide who's in the wedding. It's like being the president of your very own country. So ta-da, you're now in the wedding. I'm like, oh Lila.
Gosh.
But I mean, I felt that when I was a bride. I mean, I was president of our sorority and president of student council back in the day. So it just naturally comes out. And I think that's the moment too that she's like, I'm gonna be here. I'm staying for the wedding. Like, this is it. I'm going to be this random girl's maid of honor because she has nobody, and what do I have to lose?
Exactly. And so, day of the bachelorette party, Phoebe decides to go for a little walk down the beach, and she gets a text from Matt, her ex-husband, that just says, please tell me you're okay and that I shouldn't call the police. Basically, he goes to the house, sees that she's not there, finds their cat, Harry. Rest in peace, Harry. Harry actually passed before Phoebe left, so she found him, and that was also another catalyst for her just like being done with everything. And she starts like swearing at her phone a bunch, runs into Gary, who's out jogging, and he mentions that her absence was noticed at the bridal brunch, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah,
because like she wasn't originally part of the wedding party, but now that she's officially the maid of honor, she's stepping in. And we also find out why Juice is called Juice.
So Juice got her nickname because Wendy, her mom, used to call her that because she had so much energy as a toddler. She was like being juiced up, and that's where her nickname came from.
Yeah. There was also an interesting little exchange that I just came across as we're sitting here where Phoebe and Gary have this like parallel like thought process about things, but in very different situations and under very different circumstances. But when Gary asks if everything's okay, she was like, "Oh, it's my husband calling." "Oh, just my ex-husband, actually." And, you know, he says that he still struggles with saying my dead wife and like just finding the right semantics for things, and like certain words can feel like things are more final, certain like just so everything feels wrong in general when it comes to like these relationships that they've lost, which I also think comes into play with Lila later in the way that she handles Gary's deceased wife. So
Phoebe now is in charge of the bachelorette party because she's the maid of honor. So she takes the rental car, right, and heads out to buy things for the bachelorette party and new clothes too. So on this, we also get some background on Phoebe too. We learn about their last Thanksgiving together, her and Matt. She just thinks of it as like a dream. She describes it as being in a dream when she like thinks about that day. That like Matt and Mia was like the mistress. We're laughing together, and this was like 3 months before the affair. She just back. I feel like when something happens, you go back to all these situations. You could see it if you were actually paying attention to, like after looking with a different lens. And Matt tells Phoebe that Mia brought him to life again, that he can't help it, that he needs to see this through. And I feel so bad for Phoebe there, but with that too, like Mia made Matt feel alive. It's just this like thought too that there's hope even if you're not in a good situation. Like even though this is not the best situation for Phoebe, it's still like, yeah, it was that piece.
Yeah, it's so funny too because you just talked about your song, and like that's where I got the thought for my song, was just like when you know like it's time to go. I'm excited to talk about that later. But it was that theme too of just like stepping back and being like, this isn't serving me anymore. We just got to move on. But yeah, we also see there were so many moments that were just so funny. Like Juice just calls Lila a bitch, and then she's confused why Phoebe isn't more upset that she just called Phoebe's best friend a bitch.
Right.
And, you know, it's very, you know, young girl, like trying to understand the world sort of situation. Everyone jokes that basically when Lila was born, they were just like, congrats, mom and dad. It's a bitch. Because that's how she was like her entire life growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the damn belt of Matt.
Yeah, the damn belt. Matt is not my favorite.
No.
We don't talk about him too much, but like Phoebe and Juice, like Juice asks her what happened. And because there was this moment that they like see this building that this person built for the mistress. And Juice asks about her relationship with Matt and the mistress and everything. And Phoebe tells a story of this belt that Matt had, that it's always the same belt. And it's like to her, it made him seem reliable that he always kept this belt and had it. And it was one of the reasons why she loved him. Yeah. Because of this belt. Speaking of clothes.
I don't know.
They do go dress shopping and shoe shopping, which I think is fun. And I feel like it just gives Phoebe and Juice more time to bond through that as well. And just relating to her, and Juice not having a mother and any longer, and Phoebe wanting a daughter. I just feel like this was a cute little dynamic for them.
I agree. And it's really funny too, because you can tell Phoebe doesn't know how to like behave in front of young kids. Juice tells Phoebe when they're shopping that she looks like Miss Scarlet from Clue. And Phoebe's like, oh, is Miss Scarlet hot? And Juice is like, no one from Clue is hot. Like, what are you talking about? Now, Juice does start to like open up a little bit to Phoebe though about everything. And I think it's interesting the dynamics that we see between like Phoebe and Gary and Phoebe and Lila and Phoebe and Juice and all of these interpersonal relationships that Phoebe just got like thrust into, because Juice says she can't talk to her dad about her mom that passed because Lila gets upset about it. And like, this is where I think the fact that we know down the line too, like Lila does not love Gary, like point blank period. They were not meant to be together. This was just, oh, I feel like this is the right thing to do, so let's get married sort of situation. And she says He's so weird around her, like she's this queen or something. He'll like put out a glass of white wine when she gets out of the shower, like her shower was oh so traumatic. And Juice is just so sassy. And she says like she has nothing in common with Lila, which makes sense. And Phoebe suggests air and food.
Right? I think she's like, nothing important. And Phoebe's like, yeah, air is not important.
Yeah.
They do have Disney in common, which I'm like, okay, that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah, got a little something. Then they come across a dog named Frank, and Phoebe is sold. But the hotel doesn't allow them the whole way back. Juice just tries to come up with new names for Frank. Phoebe goes to return her borrowed clothes when she gets back from Lila's mom, Patricia. And Patricia, bless her heart, loves to be on that wine girl. And she starts spilling all about her relationship with Henry, who is Lila's father. He was 50. Oh my God, 50.
Oh my gosh. He was old, but not that old.
He was real old. No, he was. I was like, that is incorrect. That is the wrong number. So Henry was 15 years older than her, and she worshipped Henry in the beginning. And then she starts to compare her relationship to Lila and Gary's because Gary is a little bit older than Lila as well. She can't tell if she's like this all-knowing, all-being mom or just like a wine mom who's just oversharing with someone that she doesn't know. And now Patricia is actually very hesitant about the marriage in general as well. And she's tried to have her hand in the pot for the wedding. And it's very clear that Lila wants nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
But she says it's because Lila's dad's dying wish was to see her get married, which is also why Lila is spending all of this money on the wedding to like fulfill this wish that her father had. And she says that Lila always looks at men to solve her problems and to help her be a better woman. And it's just this more of like a transactional growth relationship where she's not really providing a lot, but they're providing for her. And she says, my daughter doesn't fully love people yet, not the way that she will.
That quote made me like give a lot of credit to Patricia.
100%.
I'm like, because at first I felt she was just trying to, not want happiness for her daughter in a way, like not support her.
Yes.
But I think that
I agree.
quote there really showed her that she knows her daughter and that she's just trying to be the best that she can. But she knows that this isn't the way that she loves people and how she's not getting the love that necessarily she needs either right now.
Correct.
Then Patricia asks Pamela, aka Phoebe, because Patricia calls Phoebe Pamela, and after Phoebe corrects her, she's like, once I think your name is Pamela, you're just Pamela.
Like, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to try and change.
Right? And so Patricia asks her if Lila's embarrassed of her. And Phoebe's like, no, but she's definitely angry. And then what Phoebe says back to Patricia throws her off because she's like, and you're also angry at her. Patricia's like, it's not easy being angry at your own creation. It's like being angry at yourselves. There's this whole story of how Gary and Lila met and this painting and this priceless painting that Lila just gave away to Gary. I feel like to Patricia, too, it's just Lila, again, falling for these guys that really don't necessarily make her a better person, but she thinks they're a better person. And as a new mom, I haven't dealt with this yet, but as a daughter, right, that's close to her mom, too, I could see how that kind of relationship would be strained after that, too.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, I'm probably going to say interesting dynamic a dozen times in this episode, but it really just is. I feel like this was just a study of people and behaviors and how certain situations cause people to react. And yeah, it was very intriguing to say the least. But we do get started with the bachelorette party, and it starts with a water journey, which is very fitting for Lila and all of her baths. And they're finally able to like relax a little bit. And now this was my favorite part of the whole book. This was my favorite part of the entire book. So Lila demands a vintage car for the wedding. Like, this is a demand of hers. They had to have one. The hotel, don't worry, they found a vintage car. However, when they get back to the hotel from this water journey, poor Jim has to break the news that you guys, I wish we were making this up, but someone fucked the vintage car in the parking lot.
You heard that right.
Like, a man was fucking the car in the parking lot. And there's this whole insane debacle about whether or not the man actually fucked the car. And he was like, I'm pretty sure I know what that looks like.
And Lila's pissed. Which, yeah, of course, right? Like,
Yeah, but like she's mad at the hotel, and I'm like, for
yeah.
no one could have prepared.
No.
No one could have prepared for this.
And then
Lila.
sweet Gary's like, Lila storms away, like, demanding a new car, obviously. And Gary's like, Jim, why did you have to tell her? And Jim's like, well, she's not a child. And Gary's like, but still, man. Like, how would she have known? Like, now it's a big deal. No one would have known. How would they know? How would they know?
No one would have known. They wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And I just need to know. I have so many questions about the man who decided to stick his dick in the tailpipe. I have so many questions.
Right.
And the car does come back up. The car is like a big point of contention toward the end of the wedding too.
Yep.
But this was the first point of contention with it.
Yeah. They go back to the room and Phoebe gets ready for the rest of the bachelorette party. And I really like what she said here. I'm going to pull it up and read it. So she's getting ready and she's like putting makeup on. And she said she missed it because this is post-pandemic. So this is one of the first books I feel like we read that referenced COVID and the pandemic too. And so she said she missed like putting on makeup during the pandemic. She said it's a nice ritual. And if you do anything enough, that's what it becomes. A ritual that has the power to make you feel something. I just like that too because the more you do something, the more of it turns into a habit. And it just makes you feel something and that power that you kind of gain back by doing those little things every day. So I really liked that idea. Our previous maid of honor, Viv, hired this sex woman. We didn't really know like what this woman was going to be doing, right? And so it turns out that she used to work at the zoo. And she's a specialist in panda mating. So she puts them through a lovely slideshow and talks about details of her panda mating experience and helps them work through their intimate life that way. And Lila's like, this is awkward. Like, I don't want to talk about something so private. Girl, it's your bachelorette party. I don't know. It's just I'm like, okay, Lila. Then they get to Phoebe and she just talks about like when she wanted to have sex again and it was with the stranger in the hot tub. And kind of how that like made her feel alive and she felt bold enough. And it was scary, which is kind of awkward because like the bride doesn't want to talk about her intimate life and then Phoebe's over here like, you could get it. Then they go to the oldest tavern in America. And the classy bitches that they are break out the penis straws.
They sure do.
That Lila wanted compostable penis straws. And I think they were
biodegradable.
Yeah.
Compostable.
Yeah. Right. And then after the tavern, they have tarot readings by time.
Love this. With the tarot readings, because we do be loving some tarot here. The theme that kept coming up in Phoebe's specific reading was "You are here." And it was kind of reassuring to her that there wasn't something about the future, but it was about her like living presently and like being there now, which is great considering that she thought she would be dead by now.
Yep. No, I think that was great. Then they finish off the night at the boom room and Lila gets trashed.
Sure does.
And they get back to the hotel and Lila, of course, can't find her key. So they go to Phoebe's room. Drunkenly, Lila admits that she finds Jim attractive, the best man, and she had a dream about him. And she like admitted this whole thing. And then Lila also drunkenly tells Phoebe that she should be with Gary. That Phoebe should be with Gary. And Phoebe is taken aback and kind of like, wait, why would I be with Gary? Why do you think I should be with Gary? And Lila, of course, Lila doesn't actually care about Phoebe and doesn't really answer this question. And so Phoebe asks her, do you want to marry Gary? And Lila responds by saying, I don't want to not marry Gary. I just don't want to be alone. A quote from their conversation too that I really liked is, nobody can take care of you the way you need to take care of yourself. It's your job to take care of yourself like that. And so just not trying to find that meaning in somebody else. Like when she says, I don't want to be alone, like finding it in herself. Like it's her job to take care of herself. And so Lila screams that she doesn't want to marry Gary. But Phoebe's like, calm down. Let's wait until the morning. Like, sleep. You're drunk. Sleep. And I was like, all right, I don't snore. Don't worry. And of course she snores. He was like, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. So she digs through the purse and finds the key to the bridal suite. Goes over there. Dear old Gary comes and knocks on the door because obviously he thinks it's Lila's room. And he's surprised to see Phoebe there, not his bride to be.
Yep.
And they have another conversation about his first wife and just how he did end up at the gallery and meeting Lila, and that he was trying to feel something, like after his first wife died. So he was in the gallery, like looking at art, trying to be like, all right, what does somebody see in this? Like try to understand this, whatever is happening there. A little while after that, Lila goes into his office. Gary's a doctor. I don't know if we said that, but Gary's a doctor. And Lila goes into Gary's office with her dad. And that's when they were like, oh, you were in the gallery, blah, blah, blah. This is meant to be. This is great. This is a little invisible string. And so that's how they met there. And again, Gary's fawning over Phoebe, just saying, you're so easy to talk to. I could tell you anything.
Yeah, it was just like, it was so strange. And there's something to be said too, like there's almost this like blame placed on Gary that he couldn't like fix Lila's dad. There's just this like, I was so confused why Lila was even with him in general. I understand why from the perspective of who she is as a character, but I'm sitting here and I'm like, there's like resentment there and you don't really like him and you guys have like nothing in common. What are we doing? And obviously Gary latched on to like a relationship post his wife passing. But yeah, it was just like, it didn't make any sense. In the context of the book, it does. But as we're talking about the relationship again, I'm like, dude, this is so bad.
Yeah.
This is really bad.
Right. And as they're sitting there too, Phoebe lets her mind wander to what Lila said about not wanting to marry Gary. And she thinks about what it would be like to reach out and touch his beard. And she sends him off to his room. But she does think about him that night and just how there could be a possibility if Lila actually meant what she said.
Yeah. Now we're on to the next day. That was a lot in one whole day there. There was a lot of stuff that happened. But yeah, there's surfing lessons that are taking place, and Lila skips out because she's super hungover, of course. Phoebe goes instead, and it's her and Juice learning. Gary's there too. And Lila does not mention anything to Phoebe the night before where she said she didn't want to marry Gary. She's just more so upset that she ate cabbage. So there's that. Juice loved her little surf lesson. It was super cute. Basically, after the surf lesson, they have lunch, and Phoebe describes like the laughter that they have as a warm sweater, and she feels at home like at this restaurant at the table with the two of them. There's just something about it that feels right. And I think, knowing how the book ends and knowing where things leave off, I think it's just that, like, it's not even the fact that it is Gary and Juice. I think it's just the fact that she's having, like, emotional, true connections with someone outside of Matt. Yeah. And it's just, obviously her and Gary had, like, an immediate sort of connection, and they do have a lot in common, and they talked very like openly about certain things, but like I think it's just that genuine human connection that she was missing.
So to parallel off what you said about like exactly how she was feeling is just that she felt at home at the restaurant table. So she sips her water. She has never in her life felt totally at home around any restaurant table. Not even with her husband. She was so often worried about what to say. Did they have anything left to say? And was there food in her teeth? So, and then she just, the way she feels so at home and at ease with Gary and Juice, like you said, just that connection, that feeling of home and contentment.
Yeah. It's so clear as time is passing that Lila and Gary should not get married, and Phoebe just doesn't do anything about it because it's not her place to do anything about it. And there was just a quote about that too, and it says, "It is becoming clear to Phoebe they are not in love. Maybe they were in love, but now they are two people who are very confused, very much wanting to be in love because Lila doesn't want to be alone." And it just goes on to say, Lila is a woman who just experiences a problem and then finds a man to fix the problem. What her mom said earlier, where she'll just pick a man that fits her needs in that current moment and hope that they'll be the miracle man catch-all for everything moving forward.
Later that night, Jim and Phoebe take an edible together. Bond is a best man and maid of honor. And they talk about like their wedding speeches they have to write. And Jim actually explains how he liked Lila first. How he got contracted to do a job outside the gallery and met Lila and talked to her and everything, and which I just thought was interesting that they actually met first, but Gary is the worst wingman ever, which we learn later with this. And Phoebe goes back to her room and is not only inspired to write her speech, but also finds a winter keeper job at this nearby mansion that she applies to. So she's bold, she's going for it.
Yeah, the attempt at her life really just, I feel like, woke her up, and she's like, why not? I'm gonna try whatever the fuck I want. I'm just gonna go for it. If it doesn't work, great, we'll try something else. Yeah, but now we're at the rehearsal dinner, and Lila says she's too busy to run errands, and Gary hurt his back, so Phoebe has to haul him along with her, which isn't great, but they do go to check out the home that has the winter keeper position, and then they just continue to run errands. They go to the tailor, his office, the barber.
And so when they go to the barber,
Yeah.
Nick is like, oh, you got to make, the barber's name is Nick. Nick's like, oh, you got to make an appointment. And Gary's like, oh, I didn't know I needed to. I'm getting married. And then Nick's like, oh my gosh. All right, you're the groom? All right, come on. I'll take you. You got to wait a little bit, but I'll take you. And he looks at Phoebe and goes, oh, are you the lucky bride? And she's like, no, just a friend. The quote from the book is, Nick looks at the two of them like he doesn't quite believe it. Why else would she be here watching him get a shave? Just showing that connection there. I thought it was interesting.
Yes. Yeah. But Gary opens up to Phoebe again and says how easy it is to talk to her. And he feels so drawn to her. And Phoebe, good for her, she does not let the conversation continue because the man is still moving forward with his wedding to Lila.
Yeah.
We are now at the rehearsal dinner. We're jumping forward a little bit. And the timeline is not living up to Lila's expectations. So they cut the speeches. And Jim was not having this. No. Jim worked really hard on his speech after he had an edible with Phoebe. He really poured his heart and soul into it. So Jim says, to hell with it. And when Jim says to hell with it, chaos ensues, just some minor discomfort. And I love too, Phoebe, like they talk about Jim's disappointment, but Phoebe was like, she's also disappointed even though she didn't actually write a speech. She was just excited to get up there and like yap, basically.
Right?
Like it was her time to shine. Oh my gosh. There were fireworks that were scheduled and they were paying like $1,000 a minute for these fucking fireworks or something abhorrent, something disgusting. And Lila's like, sorry, don't care about your speech. I paid for these fireworks. And Jim's like, fuck your fireworks. I'm going to say my speech. Jim just starts talking. Jim gives his speech against Lila's wishes.
Yeah. And he like comments like, he's like, Lila's bold. God, I really do love it. And he just like talks up Lila, that she is just so great and awesome. And it's awkward. All right, let's go. And so later, Lila's like, was Jim really hitting on me during his speech? And
the answer was yes.
He loves you.
Yeah, like he's been in love with you, girly.
Right?
That man loves you so much. And poor Juice. Juice gets drunk, you guys. Juice gets drunk. She doesn't know. She doesn't know any better. Small child.
Yeah. Her Aunt Marla's like, I can't deal with vomit. Here, Phoebe. And like gives Juice to Phoebe.
Yeah. And Juice just has like a breakdown about how she misses her mom. And it's just, it's sad. She's distraught. There's a whole thing. But someone arrives. Someone shows up.
Matt arrives.
He sure does.
Why? Dude, why?
He sure does.
Why?
Matt has arrived and, basically he like goes on this diatribe about how he regrets what he did to Phoebe and how he wants to try again. And like, he just wanted to feel something and be a father. And he was mad at her for being depressed. And like, he's just the worst. I dislike him very much. Yeah. End of story. That's the TLDR. You didn't miss much. He's a piece of shit.
Yep.
But then we have the wedding day.
Finally.
We are at the wedding.
Phoebe goes to get her hair and makeup done. And she actually lets the stylist cut her hair, give her a side bang, which is very bold. Yeah. I don't think I could do that like the morning of somebody else's wedding. And when Jim shows up to the bridal suite, so one thing that they did cut out of the rehearsal dinner was the palette cleansers for the timeline too. So yes. Jim shows up to the bridal suite with 160, actually 159 because he ate one, palette cleansers. It's his way of saying sorry for the spectacle he made last night.
And like the palette cleansers were a disaster in Lila's eyes. Like, the fact that they didn't have them, she nuclear level meltdown, and everyone's like, it's fine. But the amount of control that she needed to have and every little detail going perfect was, I think, just a testament to the fact that she floated through life so much that this was the one time that she felt like she could exert power over other people and do it in a way that was like to a T of what she wanted, truly.
Lila's famous last words this whole book is, "Nothing is going to ruin my wedding. Nothing is going to ruin my wedding." She said that she thought for 2 years that something was going to ruin her wedding, that Lila was certain. And I feel when you do that too, you're looking for something to ruin it instead of trying to look at the good with everything. So everything seems like it's bad, right? Like the fact that they didn't have palate cleansers, nobody would have known, right? But to Lila, that was one thing that could have ruined the wedding. The incident with the car, if she didn't know, but now she knows, like she's looking for those things and looking for a reason.
Yeah. Now Phoebe, maid of honor duties, she's carrying Lila's train out to the car, and Lila sees that an ordinary black town car has replaced the fucked convertible.
Lila's like, I'm sorry, what is that? I need a new car. This looks like an Uber Black. And Phoebe just straight up tells her no.
Yeah.
Like, because Pauline, the hotel worker, is like, okay, yeah, we're on it. Like, we'll find another one. And Phoebe's like, no.
Yeah.
I don't care that you're the bride. It doesn't matter.
Correct. Like, this is the least of your worries. Like, you're the bride. The whole purpose is you showing up to get married. And if this town car that you're arriving in that literally no one but you will even think about or remember is going to cause you to not walk down the aisle, I think we have bigger problems at hand.
Yeah.
Lila does have a realization that she and Gary don't love each other, which, shocker. Ooh, big plot twist there. She says that they don't love each other the way that they should be loved, which is a parallel to what Lila's mom said earlier to Phoebe about Lila basically not even knowing how to love people or how to show love appropriately. And so Lila decides to not get in the car and asks Phoebe what she's going to do.
And Phoebe tells her, you're going to go upstairs and take a very long bath, because that's how Lila used to cope with things. And that's how she's going to take care of it right now. And Phoebe tells her, you're free now. You're free to go anywhere. And so she decides Canada. And Pauline is like, all right, I'll get your credit card. I'll make you a reservation ASAP at our hotel there. And they talk about weddings, which I think is an interesting topic here, right? Weddings are a waste of money, but they're also never a waste of money.
Correct.
So there's parallels and interesting dynamic between them, right? Between weddings. And I think about how much we spent on our wedding, and if I think about the number, I'm like, holy cow, like we could have used that for down payment on a house. We could have done X, Y, and Z. But it also was not a waste of money because we had an amazing time, our friends and family together, and it really brought that out. And I think that even looking at this wedding in this book too, that didn't happen, but how many people's lives changed for the better, even though this money was spent on this.
Yeah, like how many realizations were had. And without Lila's wedding, Phoebe wouldn't be here. Like she would have just showed up at the hotel and done it anyway. Like the chances of her running into someone like Lila, who is basically just like, yeah, no, not going to happen, slim to none outside of this wedding. Now, Phoebe does get in the car and she goes to the venue to break the news to everyone. On the way back, she tells Matt that she is not going back with him. It's just not happening. They do, however, sleep together. I think that's implied. But Phoebe wants to stay at the hotel for an extra night, but Pauline informs her hotel's fully booked for the next wedding. She goes back to her room and she's notified that she gets the job as the winter keeper. And she writes out and deletes text messages to Gary to let him know, but doesn't end up saying anything. And she's inspired to write. She downloads Jane Eyre on her phone and she rereads these scenes leading up to the failed wedding. And on the hotel, like little notepad that they give you in the rooms, she jots down any line that seems to foreshadow the wedding's ruin. And it says she tried to pinpoint the exact moment when the engagement became a trap. Was it on the way to town after he proposed? Or did it start much earlier than that, long before Rochester proposed? Eventually, she called down for another pad. She writes all night. She does not smoke. She does not drink. She is energized by the thought of not knowing what she is even writing, of getting to decide it with every sentence.
Which felt very much her life to me.
Yeah.
Right? we look at what she's writing about. The failed wedding could be Lila's failed wedding, or it could be her failed marriage, right?
Yep.
And she's energized to write the unknown, which is basically her life now.
Yeah.
Just keeps going. You know, we don't know what's going to happen, but we just keep going. Then we get to the final day, right?
We sure do.
The final day,
brunch.
the wedding brunch. And since it was paid for, the hotel brings it out anyway, even though the wedding didn't happen, because why not, right? Juice makes a comment, like, did Lila leave because of us? And I think Marla's like the one that's like, we could have been nicer to her. And Phoebe reassures them, no, that's not why she left. Don't worry. And everybody at the wedding brunch is like telling stories about Gary. There's all these stories of when he grew up and just funny little stories. And so Phoebe actually shoots Gary a text and is like, you should know that the family's telling stories about you right now. And she just doesn't get a response. Like, nobody really knows where Gary is or what happened. And so Phoebe ends up saying goodbye to Jim. And she's texting Lila, who is in Canada eating poutine with her mother. And
good for them.
Just departing of ways, right, for all these wedding people. And Phoebe goes to Marshall's because she needs a suitcase, right? Because she doesn't have anything. And now she's got to go back and she has all this stuff now. And Gary finally texts her back, and she asks him, where are you? And he said, in the hot tub. And then she just says, don't move. She has to meet them in the hot tub.
Yep. And he tells her what happened the day before. Lila told him everything, how she's always been interested in Jim first. And he didn't know what to do, so he went to the cemetery to be with his first wife. He also said that he wanted to find Phoebe, but thought that might be a little weird given the circumstances of everything, so he did not.
So one of the things that stuck with me in this book is it says becoming who you want to be is just like anything else. It takes practice. It requires belief that one day you'll wake up and be a natural at it. And I think it ties back to when she talks about the routine and it becoming a ritual on just different things, and being yourself takes practice of who you want to be and just that belief that it will happen one day. I thought it was really powerful.
Yeah. It wraps up with Gary just saying to call him if she finds any ghosts in that place that she's going to be working as a winter keeper. The book closes out the way that it began, with Phoebe, instead of coming into the hotel, she's leaving the hotel. She tips the man, walks out into the world, and starts fresh. And that was like the wedding
fever
people.
Dream. Yep.
Like a fever dream. And yeah, I don't know, this book is really hard to talk about and dissect without like getting all of the nuanced details that happen between all of the interactions. But I just think that if you haven't read it and you've made it this far in the episode, I still think it's absolutely worth the read, because nothing that happened in this book was particularly shocking except someone fucking the car. And so I think that getting all of those interpersonal relationships and like those small little conversations that we glossed over in the grand scheme of things, I think makes this like a spectacular book and takes it from, what we discussed to what's really impactful as a novel. But now we're going to talk about our song choices. And for the first time in a while, I feel like I wish sometimes I'm like, I want to talk about my song right now, like when we're in the middle of something. But I like having the separation of the two, because I feel like I just go off on tangents constantly about song lyrics otherwise.
Yeah.
But I chose It's Time to Go, which is a bonus track from Evermore, and Evermore bonus track supremacy here. We love to see it. And this song was the first song that I thought of with this book. And it starts off by saying, when the dinner is cold and the chatter gets old, you ask for the tab. Or that moment again, he's insisting that friends look at each other like that. When the words of a sister come back in whispers that prove she was not, in fact, what she seemed, not a twin from your dreams, she's a crook who was caught. And it's just these like little moments in time, like the chatter gets old. You're just sitting there not having meaningful conversations anymore. It's not even the comfortable silence. It's just like that uncomfortable feeling. Specifically for this book, he's insisting that friends look at each other like that when Phoebe started to pick up between Matt and Mia. And the chorus is that old familiar body ache that snaps from the same little breaks in your soul. You know when it's time to go. And I think that is just like the overarching theme of this book. Like when a moment in time hits you that this is no longer serving you, that you need to step away, there's always these little moments, these little snaps, these little breaks. And we see it in the way that Phoebe almost took her own life. Like, she felt like that was her only option out. We see it in the way that Lila stepped away from Gary. We see it in the way that Matt cheated on Phoebe with Mia. We even see it in like some of the other relationships that we didn't really talk about throughout the book. And like the line here, or trying to stay for the kids when keeping it how it is will only break their hearts worse. Just these little moments of life where you just know like it's time to go. And the kind of lines here that I think tie back the most is sometimes giving up is the strong thing, sometimes to run is the brave thing, sometimes walking out is the one thing that will find you the right thing. And that repeats a few times through. And I think that's the theme of it, is that sometimes your rock bottom, your hurt, your heartbreak, all of the things that you go through lead you to the right thing in life, lead you to your next step. And it's that cheesy phrase, when one door closes, another door opens. But I think that we are just inherently hopeful creatures, and having that hope that when something bad is happening, something better is coming down the pipeline is honestly the only way that you can get through life sometimes. And there's a line about this line, I think there's speculation about it, but in the song, I think it's actually about Taylor and her masters with Scooter and Scott. But it just says, 15 years, 15 million tears, begging till my knees bled. I gave it my all. He gave me nothing at all, then wondered why I left. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like even the tone of the song and everything about it was very much like this book to me. The Wedding People was about knowing when it's time to go and knowing when it's time to take a step back. Yeah, and I just think that the line for me is, sometimes walking out is the one thing that will find you the right thing, but specifically, and you know in your soul when it's time to go. Like, you have that feeling. Yeah. It just hits you. Yeah, I love this song. Criminally underrated. And it just, it felt like a theme song to the book for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel about Happiness. Mm-hmm. Like how you described that is how I instantly thought of Happiness for this book. Yeah. Definitely Evermore vibes. There's a ton of songs I feel like I could pick off Evermore for this.
100%.
But for Happiness, it just starts out, honey, when I'm above the trees, I see this for what it is. But now I'm right down in it. All the years I've given is just shit we're dividing up. And the song is about like divorce and really having that happiness before you and happiness after you. At the end of the first verse, just says, I can't face reinvention. I haven't met the new me yet. And that's how I felt like Phoebe was, like when she realized she was alive. She's like, okay, I haven't met the new me yet. Like, all right, what is this going to look like for me? And the chorus is, there'll be happiness after you, but there is happiness because of you. Both of these things can be true. There is happiness. And so I think it comes with like Phoebe's realization, like she was happy with Matt at one point. Like it's okay to feel that. It's okay for that to be true. But also near the end when she sees that her life is still unwritten. I guess I could have used that. Natasha Bedingfield. Still unwritten. But just the rest is still open for her. So there's going to be happiness after Matt and after this thing. And also after the wedding people. Like there was happiness because of the wedding people. And there's going to be happiness after them too. Even if her and Gary don't connect. Just she was able to see that she can be open again with him. And I mean, I could read all the lyrics to this song. It's so good.
That's how I felt.
This line too that says, tell me, when did your winning smile begin to look like a smirk? When did all of our lessons start to look like weapons pointed at my deepest hurt? I hope she'll be a beautiful fool who takes my spot next to you. No, I didn't mean that. Sorry, I can't see facts through my fury. You haven't met the new me yet. And I feel like that wraps up really how she felt about Matt. Like, when did that shift? And she talks about, at Thanksgiving or the award, the banquet, right? The winning smile will begin to look like a smirk, and she'll be a beautiful fool who takes my spot next to you. And she's like, no, I don't mean that. Like, I need to step back. And that just felt like inner dialogue to me from Phoebe.
I love that song so much.
And I do too. And it goes in later saying, like, I can't make it go away by making you the villain. I guess it's the price I pay for 7 years in heaven. And it pulled your body into mine. And now I get to fake niceties. No one teaches you what to do when a good man hurts you. And you know you hurt him too. And it just, I think that circles back when Matt comes to see her and he's like he hurt himself. Like she hurt him through that by just leaving. And really she can't make Matt the villain when really it's her and how she deals with her life too. And so The song still ends right. There'll be happiness after you, but there was happiness because of you. And just to leave it all behind, and there is happiness. And just so realizing that there can be happiness no matter what. And
Yeah,
just to acknowledge along the way. So this
absolutely.
song was my instant done.
Yeah.
For sure.
I really love that we both had Evermore songs
I know.
because it is
Well,
such an Evermore book. It really
It's funny
is.
because I texted you and I'm like, I feel like we could have picked the same song. And we kind of did.
I
It's
thought
same
the
song,
same
different
thing.
font.
Yep.
But album, we were close.
I know, we were close. So that was The Wedding People, and we're going to give our final ratings now. If you guys are new, we rate into the moon into Saturn because the traditional star scale just doesn't feel right, doesn't fit the vibes. So I rate in moons, Hannah rates in Saturns. And so when I originally read this book, I immediately gave it 4.25. And upon reflection and after sitting away from it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I did bump it up to 4.5 moons. I feel like this is a book that deeply impacted me. I think it was a beautiful book. Like I said, I've never read anything like this, and I don't know if I will read anything quite like this again. I think this was kind of one of a kind, but 4.5 is what I landed on.
I'm giving it a solid 4 Saturns. I really enjoyed it. I think what could have made it 5 for me is Phoebe. There's just certain things about Phoebe that I wish were different, but overall I liked it.
For sure.
Solid 4.
Love it. We're going to talk about our next book. So our next book is one that we've seen everywhere. It comes very highly rated and highly recommended. And so we're going to be reviewing the book All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby, taking a full 180 here and going back to like a mystery type of book.
Yes, very excited for that. But we had some fun like Patreon content drop and everything that's still available. So definitely go check that out. And starting next month, we have some great surprises for you as well. So just stay tuned for all of that. We cannot wait.
So excited. You guys, you might be getting a little bit more of us. And if you hate us, I'm so sorry.
Right.
If you've made it this far.
Surprised you listened to this month.
No, literally. We didn't pick a code word for this episode.
Oh my gosh.
What are people gonna say in the comments?
So
tailpipe.
Yeah. Tailpipe or eggplant emoji in a car.
In a car, yes. We will understand.
Yes, but thank you for listening. We both enjoyed this book and enjoyed talking about it with you. Let us know in the comments on social media, everything, what your thoughts were. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, join our Discord, our Patreon. We only have a $5 a month, so we would love it for you to join that and get some extra content from us. And let us know what you want us to read.
Absolutely.
We are open to a ton of suggestions, and some of our favorite books are listener suggestions that we've chosen.
They sure are. So again, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. We will see you for our next episode on December 11th for All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby.
And remember, keep reading with kindness.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.